What you're going to do is you're going to export every single part by itself. So when I UV'd every single part in here, it actually created a UV tile for each one. So here, for example, if we take the hull, and I'm going to go ahead and solo that out. If I take the hull, it will have its own UV tile. So it's UV map here. If I do the morph UV, you will see that it's going to open it up into its own UV tile. And it's going to be something like this. So that's just one tile. And that's okay for each part because you can load those in and assign a different material to them in Substance Painter. And if you do that, then you will basically get a different texture space for each object, and then you can assign a material to each one. The disadvantage, of course, is going to be that you're going to have to assign a material, let's say, to the hull here and to each individual one of these different legs. So the way to do that is to actually assign polygroups to each object. So here, what I've done, and I'll go ahead and show you by turning on polyframe and also by turning off the little line button here. So now you notice that since we, in the previous tutorial, this hull had different polygroups, but here I've just assigned a single polygroup to it, and then assign a single polygroup to the sockets over here, a single polygroup to this one, a single polygroup to this one. And even though these polygroup colors look very similar, they're actually different. And just continue to assign polygroups to each individual object here, so that at the end of the day, you basically have every single object here have a separate polygroup. And it's okay to have polygroups that are the same for symmetric parts. So for example here, for these sockets, you notice that I have the same polygroup on the symmetric parts, and that's perfectly okay. So once you assign a different polygroup to each part, and the way that's done, by the way, is just going into polygroup here, the polygroup submenu under the tool menu, and clicking on auto groups. So you just select an object. So here, for example, for this one, you just click on auto groups and it will assign a polygroup to it. So notice here that it assigned a different color polygroup. And then if you have a symmetric part like this, to get them to be the same polygroup, you can just say group or merge similar groups. And if you do that, then both of them will now have the same color. And let me do that one more time. So here, notice that it's got two different colors when you do auto groups. And then when you click on merge similar groups, if they're symmetric, then they will have the same group. So once you do that for all the parts, which is a very rapid process, and you can probably write a little macro or a script to do it. Once that's completed, then you need to merge the entire pieces together. So again, that's done in Subtool by doing the merge visible or merge down. Either way works, but again, make sure that this UV is button is checked for each and every one of the merge operations you do. If you do merge down, and if you do merge visible, also make sure that the UV button is checked. And if you have your items in a folder and you say merge folder, this UV button has to be pressed as well, and it does work for it. So at the end of the day, you end up with something like this, which is right here. You end up with a model that is just one subtool, right? And it's all merged together. However, each one of these objects has its own polygroup color. So this is basically going to be the result that you get, right? So you have one object, and each one of those objects has, or each one of the parts in that object has a different polygroup to it, okay? And even though here I've got this really dense model, it's looks like about 14 million polygons, it still works. Substance Painter will take it. So, I mean, I would try to stick around that. If you want to have less polygroups, you can probably extract normal maps or displacement maps and whatnot. But this process works really well, and again, for a model that's this complex and dense, it works just fine. Now, the next trick is that we are going to export this as an FBX file. Now, to export it as an FBX file, there is a FBX export import subtool or Z plugin. So let's go ahead and do that here. Or you can just go into the export button over here and choose FBX as the file format, and it will come up with a dialog box which will be very similar to what we get over here. So make sure that you export either selected or visible or all, depending on what you are. And here, this is visible and selected and all. So any one of these three buttons would work. Choose a recent FBX format, so 2019 is the default. And export it as binary because that will make the file size smaller, but ASCII works as well either way. But I would definitely choose binary. And then the most important thing to do is here under the options, make sure that export polygroups as mats or as materials is checked or is pressed down. And that is basically what's going to make the magic happen, which is it's going to export this object as one FBX object, but it's going to export every single polygroup here as its own material. So when I load it into Substance Painter, it's going to come in with a different texture for each one of these objects, and then I will assign the texture map to each one. And this will become clear once I load it into Substance Painter. So again, this is probably our last point that we're going to do in ZBrush. So this is going to be the final result. Now I've also kept a copy of my saves from before, so it's always good to kind of have a stage save when you're doing your work. And then this stage is saved as polygrouped object, and this really kind of very military looking mech with guns almost looks cute with these colors, so it's kind of a fun thing to look at as well. All right, so let's move on to Substance Painter. Now in Substance Painter, what we need to do is import that object in. So it's a pretty straightforward process. Just go to File and New. So not File Import, but File and New. And here, under File, you need to select the FBX file. So I'm going to go ahead and select it and load it in. It takes a few minutes, so I'm going to pause the video and come back when it's loaded. Okay, so now it's loaded in, and you can see here that it comes in and kind of has this type of soft look to it, and that's because we haven't baked some of the maps that we need to bake. So here is the Mech. And most importantly, when we go to texture set lists, you can see that these are all of the different polygroups or subtools that we brought in. So remember, each one of these was a polygroup, and now each one has its own texture set. And you can kind of go through here and find the specific one that you want. So here we're just going to go ahead and pick one. And I'm just going to go ahead and pick the first one here, which is the hull. And what we're going to do is generate bake the maps for it. And the way we do that is under Texture Set Settings over here. And we just need to scroll down to where it says Bake Mesh Maps. And when we click on that, this dialog box comes up. And here's where we choose the resolution of our maps. So here we're going to go to 4K. Notice you can go all the way to up to 8. I think 2K or 4K will work fine for what we've got, but I'm just going to go ahead and choose 4K for now. Leave all the other settings as is. Don't need to really change anything right now. And here are the different maps that are going to be generated. So I probably will generate all of these, although the ID map is kind of pointless because it really doesn't have a different IDs for the different sections of the pieces, because each piece is going to have its own texture space. So you can check that off or you can leave it on. I'm going to check it off for now. But you definitely want the world space normal. You definitely want your ambient occlusion, your curvature, position, and thickness maps to be generated. So once that's done, you have two options here on the bottom. You can either bake the maps for every single texture set you have over here, which is going to take a little bit of time, or you can bake it just for this one part. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to bake it for this one part. So to do that, all we need to do is just press this button. And what Substance Painter will do is start baking these maps one by one. Okay, so here I'm going to go ahead and do that and stick with it for a little bit so you get an idea of what's going on. So notice here this dialog box pops up. It shows you which part it's working on. And here you can see that once it's done, so here right now it's working on the normal map, and notice that it tells you here it's baking 0 of 6. And so once this is done, it will show up here in your project as a map. Okay, so that's taking a little bit of time here, and pretty soon we're just going to have here we go, a image that basically is going to be the normal map for that specific piece. And now it's generating the world space normal, and that actually happens pretty quick. And then once it's done, there is the texture map for that, or the world space map, normal map for that. And then now it's working on ambient occlusion, and you can see here that it's churning away in the background, and you'll start seeing little pieces of where the ambient occlusion is resolved. And once it's done, here we go, and once it's done, it will generate another image here, another map. That's going to be our ambient occlusion map. And then now it's going to do the curvature, and this takes a little bit of time. So I'm going to pause the video and come back once curvature, position, and thickness are done. Here we go. All of these are generated, so we can click on OK. And now we can see that the part that we just had the maps generated for right over here has a lot more details than some of the other parts that look a little bit softer. And that's because it's got all of these maps applied to it. So now when we go ahead and start applying materials, and I'll go ahead and bring my shelf over and dock it. So notice here also, I need to mention that all these maps were generated for that specific part. And eventually I will be generating those maps for everything. So, but first I just wanted to do a little bit of a kind of a material assignment here, and do two kinds of material assignments. One of them is to assign a material, and then the other one is to assign a smart material. And I'm going to actually undock this because it's easier for me to find the material that I need from the list. And let me just precisely get my mouse over here, make this larger. Here we go. And then scroll through here and find, like, let's say forged iron. And then just drag and drop that onto the part that we have all these maps for. So now it takes a couple of minutes, and then here we go, we get the result. And notice here that the result is definitely taking into consideration a lot of these maps that we generated, but we can even take this a step further by using a smart materials. So in the list here, there's smart materials, and we have quite a few over here. So let's say I go ahead and find one that would work good here. So let me scroll through and find some metallic ones that might be a good ones to use for this. So here are some damaged metal or metallic pieces. Let me keep going down here. I think I've got a few that will work really well. Here we go. There's just quite a few really good metal ones. And I'm going to delete this forged iron that we already placed on here. And then go ahead and put this one, which is steel brushed, it looks like. And let's add that material instead and see what kind of results we get there. So this material, not only will it place one material, but it will also add a bunch of different materials. And I don't know if this was actually a very good choice because it has a bit of a texture on it, but you can see already that it figured out that these are the corners and the edges, and it basically weathered them for me. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one, maybe choose a different one here. And I'm just doing this to demonstrate the differences between these types of materials. So hopefully this will be better. Yep, here we go. So here we've got something that looks pretty much like a worn piece of metal, and we don't have to do any of the texturing ourselves. The material will take care of it by itself. So then I could just continue to assign this material to all the different parts. But before doing that, of course, I need to generate all of these texture or these maps for it. And again, the place to do that is under texture settings. So here I can pick a different texture set, like maybe this next one. And then here are bake mesh maps. And you can do it individually for each one, or you could do it for everything. So at this point, what I'm going to do is go ahead and do the baking of the maps. That's going to take a little bit of time. So I'm going to pause the video and come back, and we're going to see a bunch of different maps here. There are 64 parts here, and it's going to generate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 or 7 maps per part. So I'm going to stop the video, do that, come back, and then we can start adding these materials to the Mech. The map generation is complete, and it took quite a bit of time because I chose 4K for the maps, which is maybe a little bit excessive. I should have maybe chosen 4K for some of the bigger pieces and 2K for the smaller ones. But nonetheless, actually didn't take too long, and I also didn't do a 4K map for everything, so I just let it go overnight, and in the morning they were all done. So here, if I raise this up, you can see that we have a bunch of different maps. We have some ambient occlusion maps, and let me make this a little bit bigger. We have ambient occlusion maps. We have a bunch of curvature maps. We have some normal maps. Mostly not much of normals needed here because most of it is sculptural. We have some position maps, and we have some thickness maps. And last but not least, some world space maps. So as much as these look colorful and interesting, realistically, we're not going to actually be working with any of them. They just are there so that once we apply textures to, or materials and textures, or substances, I guess I should call it, to the Mech, that they will react to whatever is in these maps. And we won't even use these in KeyShot later on. We will actually generate different maps from it, but these are important for us for when we are generating our textures. So I'm going to make this back to small and move it down so we have more working space over here. And then I also have another window here that I don't know if it's visible yet, but I have a view here that is the shelf. And the shelf has a bunch of different things here in it, smart materials and whatnot, and we'll be using that on and off as well. So I'm going to see if I can dock that to the left over here. Okay, and maybe see if I can shrink the size of this a little bit. I think this is good enough. Okay, so now here we have our Mech in the middle, and we're going to start assigning materials to it. So the first thing I want to do here is select the hull itself. And to select parts, you can either drag and drop the materials onto them, or you can hold Control and Alt and right-click, and that would be the selected part. And we're going to be doing that quite a bit. So I'll probably be repeating that once or twice during this part of the tutorial. Okay, so for this, for the hull, I'm going to choose a camo material, and there are some that actually come with Substance Painter, so I'm going to go ahead and find them, and these are going to be in the Smart Materials section. And let's see here, I think I want to make these a little bit larger too so I can see them better. Here we go. As I'm scrolling through all these really cool Smart Materials, I will stumble onto the camo materials. And then there's 3 of those. There's a gray one, a green one, and kind of a desert one. So let's go ahead and choose the green one here and drag and drop it onto the hull. So what that will do now is, based on all the different maps we generated, it's going to go ahead and place that camo texture on here. Now, this camo texture isn't good, but it's really super weathered. And this is another problem that I see a lot online, is when people start using Substance Painter, everything is just over weathered. And in real life, I think this is a little bit too extreme. So let's go ahead and get this to be a little bit more realistic. And again, I'm going off of the reference that I'm looking at and seeing what kind of edge wear or just wear in general something like this would have. So this material has a bunch of different layers, just like Photoshop. It seems like this is just composed of 2 layers. And it looks like there is a layer on top, which is this grayish color. And there's a mask. And also there is a jungle camo material. And we're going to change all of these. So the first thing I want to do here is go ahead and look at the color here of this texture. So let's go ahead and take a look at the color of it, and that's over here on the bottom. And I'm going to see if I can raise this up just a little bit here. And okay, so scrolling down here, I can see that this over here, the color is where that grayness is coming from. So what I can do here is I can change that color to be a different color. It looks like it's actually using a material. It's using the steel material, so I'll just leave it at that. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and reduce the opacity of it so it's not so harsh. So here I'm getting a little bit of that weathering, but not as harshly as I did before. And that looks good. And then the next thing here is that I have this jungle camo, which is okay, but I actually want a more modern camo than this. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a more modern camo here. So the camo here is actually a procedural texture. So what we're going to do is, instead of using the one that's there, we're going to go ahead and choose another one that is within the substance library, and I'll show you where those are in a minute, but I'm just going to choose it here from this list. I could actually just type it in as well, but it's easy enough to find, I think. And it's about right there. Okay, so I'm going to use this UCP one instead. So that just replaced the camo with this one. And what I was talking about earlier is that here under procedurals, you can see that Substance has a bunch of different, I didn't mean to do that. Let's go to medium, or let's just go to large. And you can see here as I'm scrolling through, there are all these procedural things I can apply. And one of these, two of these procedural things are camouflage patterns. And so there was the one we had before. And then there is this UCP one, which is kind of a modern, more geometric, kind of razzle-dazzle looking camo pattern. And I don't know why I can't seem to locate these. They're pretty... here we go. So this is the regular camo one, and this is the one we're using right now. Okay, so these are basically procedural, so they have different attributes to them. So let's go ahead and take a look at what those attributes are and make some changes. So the first thing I want to do here is just go in here and change the colors. So these colors are good, but I want maybe some different colors, and specifically I don't really like this beige color, and I'm going to go ahead and choose a less saturated and darker color for that one. So here I'm experimenting with it, and the good news is I'm seeing my results in the viewport right away. So here a little bit darker, maybe something like that. And maybe, I think, let's try and see if we go the other direction, like a darker color this way, if that looks more interesting, and I kind of like that even more. So I'm assuming this is going to be some sort of a urban setting that it's going to be in, so that looks good. And then I can also manipulate some other things. So in addition to manipulating the color, I can also manipulate the pattern size this way, so I can go to a smaller size or a much larger size. I think this is good enough right here. And then I can also go up here and for the UV transformations make some changes too. So I can actually change the UV scale. So if I want this to be a kind of a more smaller pattern like that, I can do it. But I kind of like the more bigger razzle-dazzle looking pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and find a level that I like, maybe about here, and that's pretty good. And I'm going to stick with that. And also then I'll start experimenting with some rotation and seeing if rotation gives it a more interesting look as well. Looks like I'm going to get some really cool looking patterns just by rotating it. And I can also offset it as well if I needed to, but I think what we had before was good. So I'm going to go ahead and raise the scale just a little bit more, like so. Okay, and I think that's looking good. Maybe just play around a little bit with the rotation. And what's really nice about this is it really, you can spend a lot of time on it and get some really interesting results. So here I think I like what I see, so I'm going to stick with this one. And then here I can go ahead and start bumping up that wear and tear, see if more wear and tear looks better with this version. And here we go. I think I'm happy with this. Okay, so now I've got this as a folder that has all this information in it. And I think we're going to go with this. I'm a little bit hesitant to like this angle in the front so much, so I'm going to try and rotate it maybe let's see what this looks like that. Here we go. I think I like this a lot more. Okay, so now we've kind of done this design, and I really like this because you're actually designing the camo on the Mech as you're working with it, and it's non-destructive, and you can keep going back and forth and figuring out what works best. So now that we have this, I'm going to take this pattern right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this layer, and then Control-Alt, right-click on this leg right here, and then just paste it. And that layer will be pasted over here. Now, the thing to note is as soon as this happens, it's down here showing, you can see that the pattern size is smaller because, again, the UV size of each one of these is 4K, so it's filling in that area. So I can just go ahead and really easily here go into that jungle camo again, and then change the scale to match more or less the one we have on top, so I can find something that matches it. There we go, that works good. And so now I know that these ones are going to be similar to this one, so what I'll do is again go in here and copy this folder. And I don't know what's going on with this rotating thing. I think maybe it's doing an automatic save or something like that. So I'm going to pause the camera and come back when it's done.